Chapter 14 Who's the Iceman? By Justin Rosales. During the summer of 2009, I wasn't able to return to Camp Judson. I was forced to find a higher paying job to pay for my apartment, so I picked up a job as a dishwasher at the Deli, a local restaurant in State College. When the fall semester began, I kept my job to make some extra money on the side. I felt rejuvenated and ready for another school year. Jarrett and I spoke as often as we could, but because I had a lot of homework to do, our conversations were usually cut short. In one of our previous talks, I had mentioned to Jarrett that I thought it would be interesting to control body temperature. I told him the story of the man that died of hypothermia in 60 degree Fahrenheit, which is 15.5 degrees Celsius climate. He enjoyed seeing the mind's potential just as much as me. Even though his major was computer science, he was very interested in learning everything that was psychology related. After my first week of classes, I received an email from Jarrett with a link to a YouTube video. The video was about a man they called the Iceman. It was a television special titled Extraordinary People featured on, you guessed it, the Discovery Channel. The clip showed the Iceman running a half marathon barefoot through the snow, wearing only shorts. I was intrigued. Here was a man running in temperatures below freezing, not 1 mile, not 5 miles, but 13 miles through the snow. I was extremely impressed by his stamina and how comfortable he looked while running. At one point in the clip, Wim, the Iceman's real name, explained that he had controlled his internal thermostat using only his mind. This meant that it wasn't just some genetic mutation or natural gift, but his conscious control. My mind immediately filled with thoughts like, man, I knew it was possible. Is this maybe some sort of trick? I wanted to believe it was real, but I also wanted to view it from an objective perspective. So as I continued watching the video, I saw that Wim actually suffered from frostbite in his left foot. Okay, I thought, well, maybe it wasn't a trick if he actually got frostbite. When the video ended, I called Jarrett and expressed my excitement. We spoke of theories about maybe how it could be possible. After ending the call, I went online and just did some of my own research, and I came across an ancient Tibetan technique called Tumo, also known as inner fire. This technique offered the Tibetan monks the ability to withstand extreme cold and generate heat within their body without any external force. The most known story, passed along with the idea of Tumo, consists of Tibetan monks sitting in the snow with cold, wet sheets draped over their backs. Allegedly, they would sit and meditate for hours in order to generate heat. Their goal was to dry the wet sheets on their back in the cold climate using only the heat from their bodies. This technique just sounded awesome, and I wanted to learn it as soon as possible. Winter would be around in a couple months, and I was extremely interested in being able to keep myself warm without the aid of layered clothing. Now, at this time, I was a huge fan of a book called Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman, and I really looked up to him as a role model. I followed a few of his seminars and read many of the other books. The concept in this particular book really inspired me to do more. One day, I decided to email Mr. Millman, not really thinking he'd respond. And to my surprise, his secretary responded for him saying that Dan wasn't familiar with Tumo and suggested that I just do some research on Wikipedia. So I went to the webpage for Tumo and checked the reference section. There, I found a book called The Bliss of Inner Fire. The title intrigued me, and I thought it was about time to take my research just a little more seriously. So I purchased the title and received the book a few days later. When the book came, I put aside my homework and began reading. The text was honestly kind of difficult to read because it was a unique set of vocabulary words that I just didn't understand. I assumed it was common knowledge to most of the audience that followed yoga, but it was hard for me to comprehend. So I went online to define some of the words I didn't know, like prana, chakra, and kundalini. I progressed through the book slowly and took my time to understand each chapter. The first few chapters expressed the background of Tumo and the opinions of the author. After a few days of sporadic reading, I finally came to the chapters explaining the technique. It focused on a lot of different breathing exercises and visualizations. It seemed strange, but I blamed my opinion on my ignorance. After finishing the book, I didn't feel any closer to understanding how to control my body heat. And, I'm the type of person that likes to physically watch others and then ask questions. Therefore, I felt like the book was, to me, a dead end. So I threw it under my bed and pulled out my homework. For the next few weeks, I focused on my classes and just gave up on learning Tumo. I was disappointed, but I resolved my dissonance by watching videos of the Iceman on YouTube. One day, I was sitting in my 9 a.m. class listening to the professor speak on the subject of personality theory. As he prepared the next few slides, I decided to do a quick search on Tumo just one more time before I gave up completely. I don't know why I felt compelled to do it right then in the middle of class, but I tend to have those spontaneous moments quite often. I used Google search engine to search for Tumo, and the usual listings came up. A few websites with the definition, a forum site for those who study Buddhism, and a few images of monks sitting in the snow. I decided to revise my search and type in Tumo seminar, just for the heck of it. One new listing popped up that I hadn't seen before. It was a downloadable PDF containing a flyer. As my professor began talking again, I ignored the last 10 minutes of the lecture to investigate my new discovery. The flyer advertised a seminar to teach people the art of Tumo. The seminar was set to take place during the weekend a month and a half later in Berkeley, California. The cost was about $250, and registration needed to be completed by the end of the month. Man, I was ecstatic. I had lost all my focus in that class, and all I wanted to do was tell Jarrett. So for the rest of the class period, I just brainstormed ideas of how I could get to Berkeley, California in a month and make it to that seminar. As I was leaving class, I told one of my classmates and my best friend at the time, David Hanneman, about my idea of going to California to study Tumo. He thought it was a cool idea, but impractical, especially because, we're just college kids with limited funds. Luckily, I had my job as a dishwasher, which, although it may not have been the most flattering job, dishwashing provided me with the funds that I needed to perform research. So I called Jarrett on the way to my next class and told him about the opportunity. I'd hoped that he would be able to go with me, but sadly, he had an appointment in his hometown and was unable to reschedule. I would have to go to California alone. I never flew before, so the idea of flying across the country alone intimidated me. Regardless, I was determined to do whatever I needed to make it to that seminar. Over the next couple of weeks, I picked up a few extra shifts to cover the potential expenses of my trip. Each night, I'd come home from work with food caked under my fingernails. It's worth it, I'd repeatedly tell myself. When my next check came in, I emailed the people who were holding the seminar in Berkeley and asked them if it was too late to sign up. They told me that there were actually still spots open, and if I sent my $250 to them in the mail, they would send me the information I needed and place me on the roster. The next day, I sent out the check, went online to look for the price of the plane tickets and hotels, and the cheapest plane ticket I could find was a $220 flight from Pittsburgh to Oakland, California. I called my parents and told them that I was about to lock myself into this trip. Honestly, they didn't feel comfortable with the idea of me traveling to California, especially because I'd never traveled alone before, let alone fly. After a long conversation over the phone, they agreed to let me go, just as long as I remained cautious and tried to plan out everything. So I went online and purchased the airline tickets with the money that I'd earned from the deli. At that point, I didn't have enough money to pay for a hotel room, but I knew that they wouldn't give me the bill until I checked out. Therefore, I went online, searched for the closest hotel to the place where the seminar would be held, and I found a 5-star hotel in a 5-mile radius of the building. I took the closest one with the easiest walking route to the seminar. However, I did have one concern. I knew that in some states, only people over the age of 21 could reserve and stay in hotel rooms. Sadly, I still had a few months until my 21st birthday. I called the hotel that I'd be staying at and spoke with the manager. They assured me that it wouldn't be a problem, and I was relieved. I then proceeded to go online and find out the distance from Oakland, California to Berkeley, California. Google Maps told me it'd be about a 35-minute drive with traffic, and with the taxi, it would be about $40 total each way. I looked at the map again and searched for nearby locations where I could buy food. Luckily, there was a Walgreens just up the block, and after calling my manager to reserve the weekend off, I felt like I had done enough in one day and went to sleep. For the next 2 weeks, I focused on my studies during the day and worked at the deli during the night. My next paycheck would give me enough to cover the cost of the 2-night stay at the hotel, the taxi fare, and the potential cost of food. 3 days before my flight left, I received a packet in the mail explaining the material that'd be covered in the seminar. It also gave me the starting time and what to do when I had arrived. Everything was finally set in place, and I was ready to take on my first big adventure. Other than my best friends, my family, and my manager at work, no one knew where I was going. I didn't even tell my girlfriend, Brooke Robinson, until the day before I left. Honestly, I thought she'd think I was crazy. We'd only been dating for a few weeks, and I really wanted to be careful on who I was telling because I didn't want anyone to put me down, say it was ridiculous, or try to keep me from pursuing it. But even though I wish Jarrett could have gone with me, I had to accept it and go on behalf of the both of us. I wanted to understand Tumo beyond what the internet had to offer, and finally, I was going to have that chance.